Welcome to Off the Page. Will you start by telling us about your book?
Welcome to Off the Page, the show where we talk to Colorado authors to get the story behind the story. I'm Stacy McKenzie, a librarian here at Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Public Library in Broomfield. And today we'll be talking to authors who specialize in young adult literature. Later on in the show, we're going to have Terry Clark, author of Sleepless, but right now it's my pleasure to welcome Amy Hadley. Hello, Amy. So glad you're here today. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We're so glad you're here. We've got your artwork up on the set a little bit and your books, so people can enjoy that. Amy, you write your stories and you illustrate them yourself. Mm-hmm. If you had to choose to do one over the other, which one would you choose?
If I had to choose between the two, I'd probably say illustrator, simply because I do more illustrating than I do writing. Writing is much faster than drawing each page, but really more than either of those, I kind of consider myself more of a director. Mm-hmm. With comics, it's all about storytelling, and with comics, storytelling means having the exact right expression and pose for what's being said, framing it in the right way so that it'll and having the panels laid out in the right way on the page to evoke the right feelings for your audience, and really taking them from point A to point B. So yeah, I think a lot more about movies, and that's sort of the art that I try to go for, is just sort of taking people places.
The main character in Fool's Gold is a character named Penny, and she's a lot like you. Tell us a little bit about Penny.
It's about a hot-headed teenager who wants to be a fashion designer, and she comes to the realization that all the girls in her school are drawn to jerks. So she creates this underground club that identifies them and bans girls from ever going out with them again. So it's sort of like a good idea gone kind of shady, and what happens if she falls in love with one of these guys that she just labeled. So I am definitely a lot like her. I'm probably not quite as hot-headed, and okay. I think a lot more than I act, which she was much more of an actor. And in high school I was not quite so confident, and I didn't dress differently back then, but when I got into college, I really got into like fashion design, and back then most of the clothes I had were things that I created on my own. Uh-huh. Nowadays, I don't have any time, which makes me really sad. Like if I had any spare time, that's what I would probably be doing. But so we have that in common, and also in high school, I came to that same realization about guys. And instead of creating an anti-jerk club, I just started going out with the guys that were my friends, and have the creativity to see the good in them, instead of like just, valuing people who didn't value me. Mm-hmm. So, and it turned out pretty well, but I remember in college, sometimes I thought that somebody would be really nice, and then he turned out to be really crazy. And so I realized that I couldn't always protect myself, and that's why I wrote this book, was because it's just such a complicated thing, like trying to find the mix between being protective of yourself or forgiving others, and where the line should be
So
drawn.
It really speaks to young adults. You're trying to help them through some of those same issues you went through.
I hope so. I care a lot about teens, especially teen girls, and it's a really tough time, and almost every girl goes through a change where she sort of has to figure out who she is as a female and where she belongs, and sometimes it can be kind of harmful, and mm-hmm. And sometimes the whole guy situation just makes things worse. And so I just kind of wanted to have something that sympathizes with them, and I've known girls who have read it and said like, oh, I totally just broke up with this guy, and thanks so much. And I really don't want to take credit for it, first of all, because like I'm not trying to preach anything to any kid. It's just a story. But so it's really to their credit that they stood up for themselves. They're the ones who took from it what they would, and stories are really just supposed to raise questions. They're the ones that need to find the answers.
Yours are in a graphic novel format, and reading reading things about your books. They were classified as both comics and as manga. How would you classify your style, but also what's the difference between manga and comics?
Well, manga is comics, so it's like, well, at least, you know, in the US and stuff, we consider manga to be part of the larger group of comics. It's sort of like a type of comics, a style, so to speak. Different people argue about whether it has to be from Japan in order for it to be manga or not. I usually use the word comics. And that's probably what I align myself more to, but I use the word manga when I'm trying to explain like more along the lines of what my style is and what they can expect from it. So it's a useful word in terms of that.
Amy, as you're composing your work, which comes first to you? Is it the drawings? Is it the visuals of the characters? Is it the plot line?
I'm sometimes inspired by visuals, like usually those are the things where like in the middle of the night you'll just come up with something. Overall, I write it first and then I visualize it second, just because, believe it or not, even though I'm an artist, I'm not a very visual person as far as seeing things in my head. I sort of have to draw it first to see it, and which is really stressful when you can't see it and then you just put your pen on a piece of paper, and it's almost like molding, you know what I mean? Like, because I'll see that something's not quite right and keep molding it until it becomes what I realized was in my head, like as a mood, I guess. And so, usually I think I just kind of plot things out because I need organization in order to have creativity.
So when you're making your graphic novels, do you have several drafts of them similar to traditional writing?
Sort of. I definitely do, and I probably make more than I wanted to, especially on the second volume. I kept rewriting it because it just didn't seem right to me, the ending of it and everything. And so I do write some drafts, but really, since it takes you so long to draw these things, I mean, like, you know, a page a day if you're lucky, you have so much time to think about the plot that by the time you get around to drawing it, it ends up being different. And the cool thing is, since you already have it all planned out, and for all you teens out there, like, you know, it's always good to pre-write because, yeah, once you actually get down to doing it, you can come up with even more ideas once you already have other ideas set down. So when I would draw it, I'd do like symbolisms and foreshadowing and all the things that I learned in school and stuff with the images to have it match what I already had written. So it's sort of like doing more drafts, but it's just the fact that it just takes so long to draw that you get more time to think about it.
We're really excited to get a hold of the third installment of Fool's Gold. What will Penny be doing in that one, and when can we expect to get that issue?
Volume 1 ends with Penny's kind of nemesis, Hannah, doing something that's not so great. And then we find out in Book 2 really what her side of the story was. And the same thing is really going to happen with the end of Book 2 and the beginning of Book 3, whereas Blake has done something not so great. But then when we see Volume 3, it might be more complicated than it seems. And that's really the part that I can't wait to do in Volume 3.
So it's the cliffhangers a little bit.
Yeah, well, each volume does end with a really mean cliffhanger, and then the second or the next volume kind of explains it a little bit and makes you not really satisfied, but makes it a little bit more complicated so that you might want to read more.
We've got some illustrations here on the set for what you're working on next, which is Madame Xanadu, the Madame Xanadu series. How is this process different when you don't write the story because there's another writer for this story and you're just doing the illustrations?
Yeah, Matt Wagner's the writer for it, and just a little backdrop on the story is that it's a love story between two immortal characters and their run-ins with each other throughout history. And so I'm really excited about it. It comes out, the first volume comes out June 25th. And so anyway, Matt writes things where he just sort of gives you an overview of what's going to happen on each page. And then I choose how to lay it out and everything and what to show. And then he ends up adding dialogue to it at the end. And it's been a really cool process. It's a lot closer to how I do things than If I were to work with a typical comic book writer, usually they're more